from violent attacks on churches, prayer meetings, to physical assault. Last year, over 600 church services were also disrupted by Hindu extremists. So we have the chance to have an excellent panel to present the situation on Christians in India in the context of anti-conversion laws. First, we will have Mrs. Cece Heil, who is a senior counsel and international legal director at the American Center for Law and Justice. She will introduce Pastor Bryan Nerren, who is an American pastor who has been detained in India in 2019 and 2020. Then Mr. Shaheryar Gill will present. He is also an American lawyer, attorney, senior counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice, and professor of international law at Regent University. Then we will have Vishal Arora, who is an Indian journalist. He is very much specialized in South and Southeast Asia for 25 years. I will first give the floor to Mrs. Cece Heil. You will discuss the political context in India, and you will introduce then Pastor Bryan Nerren. Cece, the floor is yours.
No? Is it going? Thank you, Grégor. As Grégor has stated, we're here today to shed light on a pressing issue that has been escalating in India, the Christians. Despite being a minority of 2.3% in a population of 1.4 billion, Christians in India face increasing hostility and violence. This issue is not just about religious intolerance, it's about the fundamental human rights that are being violated every day. In recent years, India has witnessed a significant rise in violence against Christians. In 2024, United Christian Forum, an organization focused on protecting human rights in India, reported 743 instances of violence against Christians. This is an increase from the prior year when it reported 601 instances. And sadly, these numbers do not include the instances that remain unreported. However, these numbers represent a stark increase from the 150 incidents that were recorded in 2014 when Prime Minister Modi first came to power. These attacks range from arson of churches to physical violence, sexual assaults, and even murders. The rise in anti-Christian violence coincides with the growing influence of Hindu nationalist groups such as the RSS and the BJP, both of which Modi is a member. These groups have been accused of inciting violence and exploiting communal tensions for political gain as they shamefully portray Christians as a threat to Hindu culture and society. The agenda of the RSS and BJP concerning Christians in India is part of their broader strategy to promote Hindu nationalism and marginalize religious minorities. This has led to a significant increase in violence and discrimination against Christians in recent years. In just a moment, you will hear from one of our clients, a United States citizen who witnessed how seriously the current government, in step with the RSS and BJP agenda, takes the promotion of Hindu nationalism and considers Christianity a threat to the same. Pastor Nerren will tell his story of how being a Christian led to his arrest and detention in India for over 7 months, despite not having committed any crime. Although some may believe the Hindu nationalism agenda is just a few low-lying bad actors in the government, unfortunately, Prime Minister Modi himself has ties to the BJP and RSS, and they are not just superficial. Modi joined the RSS in his youth, participating in its activities and adopting its ideology. The RSS has been a significant influence on Modi's political career and policies, and even as Prime Minister, he maintains close ties with the RSS. Modi also became a member of the BJP. Modi held various positions within the BJP, including serving as the Chief Minister of Gujarat from 2001 to 2014. And let's not forget that Modi was in charge of Gujarat during the riots of 2002, which many have argued he was complicit in the violence that is frequently referred to as the Gujarat genocide. Nonetheless, when Modi became the Prime Minister of India in 2014, he led the BJP to a significant electoral victory. Motivated by the RSS and BJP, one of the most troubling ways the government achieves its Hindu nationalism agenda is the use of anti-conversion laws. These laws, enacted in several states under the BJP's rule, are ostensibly designed to prevent forced conversions. However, they are often used to target Christians, criminalizing legitimate religious activities and leading to the arrest and harassment of clergy members and other Christians. In Uttar Pradesh, for example, the law prohibits conversion by misrepresentation, force, undue influence, coercion, allurement, or by any fraudulent means, a definition broad enough to encompass almost any form of religious outreach or practice. The impact of these laws and the violence they incite is profound. Christians in India face not only physical attacks, but also social ostracism. They are denied access to government benefits available to Hindus, and in some cases, they are even barred from drinking the same water or burying their dead in the community. This systemic discrimination perpetuates historic injustices and undermines the constitutional protections meant to ensure religious freedom. India's constitution guarantees freedom of religion and prohibits discrimination based on religion. The preamble declares India a secular state, and Articles 25 to 28 ensure that every citizen has the right to practice and promote their religion peacefully. Despite these constitutional protections, the reality on the ground tells a very different story. Additionally, Prime Minister Modi has made statements emphasizing religious tolerance and the importance of respecting all faiths. In a speech in 2015, he said, "Everyone has the undeniable right to retain or adopt the religion of his or her choice, without coercion or undue influence." He also emphasized that unity strengthens us, division weakens us. However, the actions of his government and the rhetoric of Hindu nationalist groups often contradict these statements, leading to an increase in hate speech and attacks on religious minorities. The involvement of the BJP and RSS in the persecution of Christians is well documented. The RSS, as the ideological mentor of the BJP, has been accused of inciting violence against Christians and other religious minorities. In October of 2021, Mohan Bhagwat, the head of RSS, made a speech warning Hindus about religious conversion and alleged demographic changes in India's northeastern states, which have a large Christian population. This speech was followed by a series of violent attacks on Christians and churches across India. The situation is particularly dire in states like Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, where the number of incidents targeting Christians is alarmingly high. In Manipur, the crisis has reached a critical point with hundreds of lives lost, church buildings destroyed, and tens of thousands of people displaced. As we reflect on these troubling developments, it is crucial to remember that the persecution of Christians in India is not just a religious issue, it's a human rights issue. It's a call to action for all of us to stand up for the principles of religious freedom and equality. We must demand that the Indian government take concrete steps to protect its Christian citizens and ensure that their rights are respected. The persecution of Christians in India is a stark reminder of the challenges we face in promoting religious tolerance and human rights. It is a reminder that our work is far from over and that we must continue to advocate for justice and equality for all. Now, I'd like you to hear from our client, Pastor Nerren, as he relays his personal encounter with Hindu nationalism and its disdain for Christianity. On a legal note, he was arrested, had all of his funds seized, imprisoned, and detained, none of which were legal actions under India's own laws. And as you will hear, the rule of law does not matter in a country that is determined to purge Christianity entirely. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece.
Hello, my name is Bryan Nerren. I'm the pastor of House of Prayer Church in the U.S. and president of the Asian Children's Education Fellowship. My reason for speaking to you today started in 2002 after making a trip to Nepal and India. During that trip, I began a project that continues to be a passionate part of my life. The underprivileged children in India and Nepal needed help to emerge from a life cycle of poverty. We established a nonprofit organization and started working with local churches, governments, and Rotary International in India and Nepal. Our plan was to help children at risk. For 18 years, we raised funds and helped thousands of children who had no other possibility of an education go to local schools. Many of the more gifted went on to secondary education. We've made a difference in the lives of many families and contributed to health and productivity of those communities. But then on October the 5th, 2019, everything changed. Several of us were on our normal twice-a-year trip to India and Nepal to work for and among the underprivileged children. On arrival at the Delhi airport, the computer systems were down. It was 1 a.m. in the morning, and no one seemed to know what to do other than to say, "Just you wait." We had an 8-hour layover in Delhi before flying to Bagdogra, India airport. After some time, we were given our electronic visas and told to move to the next area. As we entered the next area, our journey into the chaos of electronic failures continued. At the first security checkpoint, I was asked 3 questions that had never been asked before in India. Are you a Christian? Will you meet with Christians in India? And will you give them any of the money that you're carrying? The answer, yes. The money was declared to the security officer and his supervisor, then to 2 tax officers, and finally to the customs officer. They all cleared us to travel on to Bagdogra, India. However, on arrival at Bagdogra, I was arrested and interrogated for 8 hours of harsh treatment. Then I was taken to jail to appear before a judge the next day. The judge did not speak to me in the courtroom and sent me to prison. It was my understanding that I would be in prison for 30 days before I could speak to the judge about bail. But with the help of the American Center for Law and Justice, I was released from the prison on the 6th day. For 7.5 months, I worked my way through the Indian judicial system, being continually threatened by the Indian government. The threat was that I would be sent to prison for 7 years. During interviews with a customs official, they told me that they were ordered by the central government of Delhi to send me to prison in whatever way was necessary. My crime, according to the government, was spreading the Western Christian ideas that poor children could have a better life with education. They said I would be made an example to other groups to what would happen if they came to India to help the poor. Since Prime Minister Modi has been elected, 12,000 plus Indian NGOs have had their permits canceled, which had allowed them to receive money in India to help the people of India. Several months into my ordeal, I was visited by a high-ranking member of the BJP. He said I was going to jail for 7 years for giving false hope to Hindu children. He said, "I hope you die in prison. The best thing that could happen to the poor in India is for them all to die soon." He said what India needed most was the death of 300 million people. He said that during my 7 years in prison, I would see India become a Hindu-only nation. Every person in India would convert to Hinduism, leave the country, be eliminated. People like him continue to this day to plan the genocide of millions of Indian people. On any given Sunday in India, Christian pastors are taken from their churches, often along with their wives, and beaten with pipes for being a Christian. Then the police, under government directives, arrest the pastor and his wife on religious conversion charges. India is quickly becoming the most dangerous nation in the world for Christians, especially for the tribal people who are the most underprivileged of India. Over the past year, the Indian government, the RSS, and groups of Indian nationalists have burned 400 churches and burned thousands of homes. In 2023, in the Indian state of Manipur alone, 150 plus Christians murdered, 70,000 plus people driven from their homes and still living in camps. 400 plus churches burned, 500 homes destroyed, women paraded through the streets naked and raped. The government's story is that the tribal war, Kukizol Christian against Meitei Hindus, but why were the first 200 Christian churches burned Meitei Christian churches? I compel and I challenge this body to reveal the truth before thousands of innocent Indian Christians are murdered in the name of Hindu nationalism. All this death and destruction for the idea of Hindutva or Hindu nationalism is to destroy all other religious beliefs. On January the 22nd, 2024, Prime Minister Modi dedicated the Hindu Temple of Ram, declaring Hindutva the present and the future of all Indian people, one nation under Ram. Just last month, a very good friend was put under investigation by the Home Affairs Ministry. He was targeted for arrest, but was miraculously not at home when they came to arrest him. He had to go into hiding until he and his wife could get into a neighboring country and finally back home to the USA. His crime was not a crime. He was helping Christians to learn. Now, every day, the police harass and threaten the arrest of the Indian Christians that knew my friend. Once again, the government of India is trying to remove all foreigners, especially Christians, from Northeast India. For the sake of human dignity, human rights, and for the future of our children to be human, stop the Indian government from inciting the next national genocide against their own people. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak today.
So thank you very much, Cece. We had a very strong testimony from Pastor Nerren. Now I will give the floor to Shaheryar Gill. So as I said, Senior Counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice and Professor of International Law at Regent University.
Thank you for all of you for being here. As you've heard from my colleagues, there have been more than 600 incidents of violence just last year in India. These incidents include church attacks, home attacks, breaking up church services, filing false anti-conversion cases against people, pastors who are getting arrested. Now, these more than 600 cases combined in Iran, there are more cases in India than Iran, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia combined. But nobody's talking about it. Only a few NGOs are raising their voice, like Pastor Nerren, ACLJ, CSI, and a few other organizations, but no state or the United Nations, nobody's raising voice against these people or to fight for these people who are being persecuted. In June 2003, while visiting the White House, Prime Minister Modi denied that there was a problem of religious discrimination. One of his colleagues, Mohan Yadav, in the same party, in March 2025, he said he would introduce legislation to impose the death penalty for anyone who converted a minor girl, basically imposing the same penalty for rape of minors. That's the conversion penalty that is being discussed now. There are anti-conversion laws in about 10 states. 2 states have repealed them, 2 states have not enforced. So total would be about 14 states, but 10 have active anti-conversion laws. Now, as you heard, the definition of, or the statute that my colleague Cece Heil read to you, it's a very broad statute. It says no person shall convert or attempt to convert, either directly or otherwise. Otherwise is not defined. Any person from one religious faith to another by use of force or by inducement or by any fraudulent means, nor shall any person abet any such conversion. Now, as you can see, the law is already broad and it covers almost anything. But the definitions of force, inducement, and allurement, all of these are even broader. For example, conversion by force. What is force? Even a threat of divine displeasure is used as illegal force. So for example, if a Christian says, God won't be happy with you if you steal or commit adultery, that would constitute a threat of divine displeasure under the law. What is inducement? Conversion by inducement? The offer of any gift or gratification, either in cash or in kind, and shall also include the grant of any benefit, either pecuniary or otherwise. You heard Pastor Nerren feeding the poor. That's a benefit that is prohibited under the anti-conversion law. So if you feed poor people, if you hand out Bibles or literature, or if you are praying for a sick person, that could be an offer of a gift or gratification under the law. What is fraud? Conversion by fraud. You can't convert anybody by fraud. But what is fraud? Misrepresentation of any kind. There are cases where people have been accused of talking badly about Hindu gods, and that constitutes misrepresentation under the law. People have been arrested for that. Conversion by allurement. Same thing. An offer of any material benefit. What is the material benefit? Pastor Nerren told you about taking money and to India, trying to feed the poor, perhaps teaching children, and the government thinks that is allurement to convert people. Now, the punishments for breaking anti-conversion laws is about from 1 year to 5 years, depending on which state you are. The punishments increase if somebody tries to convert a person from a lower caste. Lower castes historically in India have been disadvantaged. The Dalit community is disadvantaged, the untouchables. And if you convert these people, that's even higher, it calls for higher punishment. Then the law also requires that you have to give a prior notice if you want to convert somebody. You have to go to a magistrate to inform that you are going to violate the law. So therefore, please come and arrest me. Reconversion to Hinduism is not punishable. You can convert to Hinduism, and that's okay. Now, the Supreme Court of India had said that these laws are constitutional. Article 25 of the Constitution provides for freedom of religion to profess religion and to propagate religion. But then the Supreme Court, interpreting that article, says Article 25 of the Constitution does not guarantee a person's right to convert someone or to your own religion, but instead establishes the right to spread the tenets of one's religion, but with due restrictions. What are the due restrictions here? The laws explain the due restrictions. Now, these laws have led to two kinds of persecution. One, cases under the law where people have been arrested. The other kind is where people have been simply attacked by mobs. For example, in December 2017, some people were simply singing Christmas carols. 6 Christians were arrested after somebody accused them of converting people. In 2020, in December, a pastor and 2 members of his congregation were arrested at a prayer meeting. Again, they were accused of converting local religious villagers. In January 2023, a pastor and his wife were arrested, and they were accused of giving Christian literature to people who could not even read. And that constituted false representation of Hindu gods, or giving benefit to these poor people who simply were receiving some literature. The couple was convicted, fined, and jailed, but then they were granted bail. The attacks that you have heard, over 600 incidents, the laws have been used to attack Christians. So in July 2021, 25 Hindu nationalists stormed a prayer meeting and accused people of luring the Hindu people to convert to Christianity. In July 2021, a pastor and another Christian from his congregation were arrested in a private home where they were doing a prayer meeting. Again, these people were accused of converting just because they were praying at home. In February 2025, a Hindu mob disrupted the church 5 Christians, including a pastor, were arrested after a complaint was filed by a Hindu nationalist group called Bajrang Dal. In this case, they alleged that the people were defaming Hindu gods, which is, again, as I explained earlier, which was a misrepresentation of any fact. So defaming a Hindu religion, if they were simply talking about, well, every religion says that this is a true religion. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a religion. So they have to deny the other religious beliefs. So therefore, if you say, my religion is correct, that's you're misrepresenting the facts. And that's punishable under the law. Yet, the government says there's no persecution, there's no discrimination of Christians. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shaheryar, for your presentation. We have time for questions after the next presentation, because what you presented is highly interesting and precise. I would like to also add that for written precisions, you have this report on anti-conversion laws and persecution of Christians in India. So this report is available here. You can come at the end of the side event and ask for a copy. You will find all the information and legal information. So I will now give the floor to our fourth speaker, who is present online. He is Vishal Arora. He is an Indian journalist. He has covered South and Southeast Asia for 25 years. He is the editor of an Indian-based independent media called Newsreel Asia, and a faculty member at journalism schools in India. So we will now listen to his testimony online.
Thank you very much. If I could share my view, my perspective.
We don't hear you.
Still not audible?
Okay, so we take on the, okay. It's okay, it works, thank you.
Okay, should I carry on? Okay, so I presume that you can hear me. So, just wanted to share my perspective as a journalist based on my writings and interviews. I would say that, India's conversion laws are titled Freedom of Religion Acts, though their provisions actually impose restrictions rather than uphold freedoms. And I have 10 very quick reasons to say this. The first is that these laws uniformly claim to prevent conversions through force, fraud, or inducement. But the terms, as Dr. Gill mentioned, force, fraud, and inducement have been kept so ambiguous that they have resulted in significant misuse and unwarranted allegations. If I could give you a few real-life examples. Now, allurement is defined as anything that is in the form of gift or gratification. It could be monetary or otherwise. So in practice, even legitimate acts of charity are misrepresented as inducements for conversion. In one incident, at least, an individual who was attending a birthday party was accused of attempted conversion simply because some guests carried a birthday gift. And nuns and medical doctors have been arrested alongside healthcare workers for organizing medical awareness camps, despite taking permission from authorities and conducting no religious activities. Now, the second is that We have had these laws since 1967. Today, as Mr. Gill mentioned, that about 10 states have implemented these laws. Let's look at the first law when it was enacted in Orissa state, which is now named as Odisha. Now, it was based on a very controversial report, which was called the Niyogi Commission report, which was very widely criticized for lacking substantive evidence of alleged widespread forced conversions, as it said. And questions were also raised about the affiliations of the head of the commission, Mr. Niyogi. So the very law that set precedent for 9 others, or rather 13 others, if we look at how many of these laws have been enacted, itself appears to be on a shaky ground. Now, the third is that these laws mandate prior notice or permission from district authorities before any religious conversion can take place. Now, this compromises privacy, and it also undermines an individual's freedom of belief and even personal autonomy. If I feel like converting to another religion, why should I need to send a notice or seek permission from the government? And the fourth is that these laws require anyone who wants to convert to give detailed information to the authorities, including personal details like, how much is your income, what's your marital status, how many dependents you have in your family, and specifics of the conversion ceremony, which are then made public in the form of public notices. Now, given that conversion is mistakenly perceived negatively in a politically charged atmosphere in the country, anybody would naturally fear the consequences of their personal information becoming public. And the fifth is that authorities are required to conduct inquiries before allowing any conversion. This again undermines an individual's religious freedom and personal autonomy. What sort of inquiries can be conducted, like if I have decided to adopt a new religion? And the sixth is that the punishments are disproportionately severe, ranging from fines that can go up to 400,000 Indian rupees, which is roughly, say, about 4,500 euros, which can be big money for many people in the country. And it can result in imprisonment, including life sentence in some states. And currently, demands are being made for death penalty. That's how serious some people project conversion to be. And then the seventh is that, recently we have seen that interreligious marriages have also come under the jurisdiction of these laws. And it's because of this politically fabricated concept of love jihad. This term means that Muslim men entice Hindu women into marriage to convert them to Islam. Now, the result is severe infringement upon women's autonomy and constitutional rights. Shockingly, police have, stopped weddings on mere allegations from mobs, despite mutual family consent. I mean, I personally know women who want to marry Muslim men. I mean, who should object to that? And then the eighth is that despite hundreds of cases being filed, conviction rates remain extraordinarily low, with fewer than 5 known convictions since these laws' inception. And we are talking about decades. Now, most accused face lengthy battles, however, enduring jail time before their eventual acquittal. And then the ninth is that, although religious freedom is promised in the Constitution, it is, of course, rightly subject to considerations of public order, morality, health, and other fundamental rights. The anti-conversion laws specifically invoke public order over the issue of conversions and the protection of others' freedom of religion as their legal justification. But they overlook the crucial question of who is actually disturbing public order over conversions. It is neither those who are allegedly converting others, nor those adopting a new religion. These are third parties. And then these laws also fail to acknowledge how difficult they make it for individuals to adopt new religion. So I don't see it as a law that restricts Christians from evangelizing or sharing the gospel with others, but it's more about the rights of Indians of all religions to adopt a new religion, which has become difficult in these states. Which is why I would say it's no wonder that the majority of the complaints that are filed under anti-conversion laws are filed by unrelated third parties. And many of those third parties are linked to political groups, according to several media reports. Now, the 10th, is that these laws have significant social and political consequences, because they align with the primary driver behind violence against Christians, which is the narrative accusing Christians of forcibly converting Hindus or inciting them through incentives. As it has already been mentioned last year alone, at the end of the year when the report was released, including the incidents that took place in December by this report was by United Christian Forum. It said that over 800 incidents of violence against Christians were recorded, and mostly linked to accusations of forced conversions. Therefore, I would say that these laws not only fail their stated purpose, but actively erode constitutional guarantees of religious freedom and personal autonomy, in addition to making religious minorities vulnerable to political targeting and attacks. In conclusion, I would say that the Indian Supreme Court has yet to comprehensively evaluate the constitutionality of these laws. In the Reverend Stanislaus case in 1977, the Supreme Court ruled that anti-conversion laws were constitutional, stating that the right to propagate religion does not include the right to convert others forcibly. Agree with that. However, the court took a narrow view based on the argument in that very petition that it was responding to, focusing primarily on the distinction between propagation and conversion without thoroughly examining the larger implications of the laws. For example, it did not address critical issues such as vague definitions of force and allurement, the burden of proof that these laws place on the accused, or the potential misuse of these laws to harass minorities, leaving significant constitutional questions unresolved. So in the last, I would say that the fundamental question we confront here is, who has the authority to judge the legitimacy of an individual's religious conversion? The individual who freely converts, or third-party vigilantes motivated by political and ideological agendas? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arora, I will ask you please to stay with us as we now are going to open the floor for questions. We have 10 minutes for questions. Are there any questions in the room? If there are no questions, maybe I will.
Oh, we have one.
Okay, we have one. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Excellencies. With Indian Christians. So I am Jesu from representing the World Council of Churches here in WCC. So just I want to bring a concern that so nowadays, as you mentioned, the many things against religious minorities in India, and also there are invisible mechanism. You know, the policies and laws that are often framed in the name of national unity and religious freedom. Of course, our journalists told. So it is intentionally limit the fundamental rights of the poor or unprivileged or marginalized people. Maybe education and food. My question is whether we have any mechanism. Are we working on any mechanism to deal with these issues? I mean, which is often frame some laws in another name or in different names, but it is intentionally prevents or hinders the basic rights of the people. One thing. The another thing is maybe it's not only judicial system. Sometimes the village leaders, the village people, they are taking the law in their hands, but the government and judicial system is behind them. So, do we have any other mechanism to deal with these issues?
Okay, maybe I will take another questions, 2 or 3, and then we answer the questions.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Nisha Perez from Association Culturelle Tamil en France in Paris. In both India and Sri Lanka, religious minorities, including Christians, face increasing persecution. In India, anti-conversion laws and mob violence have been used to suppress Christian communities, while in Sri Lanka, extremist Buddhist nationalist groups have attacked churches and clergy with impunity. Despite international human rights commitments, both governments have failed to ensure accountability. What strategies can the international community adopt to address these parallel patterns of persecution and push for stronger protections for religious minorities in South Asia?
Thank you. So I think we can answer both questions. We are related. Shaheryar, would you like to?
Yes. Thank you so much for your questions. First, I think 2 questions relate to mechanisms, really. I think the first responsibility is on the state to do something about it. The state legislature in India, various states that have enacted these laws, they have the first responsibility. The Indian federal government has the first responsibility to encourage the states to repeal these laws. So,
my question is not about the anti-conversion. It's about the laws that frames in the name of national unity and in other concern. But it's eventually affects the human rights of religious minorities.
correct. So the laws that encourage national unity, they're basically misused. So if they weren't misused, then we wouldn't have an anti-conversion laws. So again, the responsibility, even the United Nations would encourage the Indian government to take the first responsibility, to take the first step under its commitments that it has made under international law, with the ICCPR, under the UDHR. So international human rights that are fundamental in every nation, India has an obligation, not just a simple responsibility, is that it has a legal obligation to repeal these laws and to enforce laws that are what's present in its constitution already. It provides for fair trials, if it provides for equality, So why can't we apply those in the name of national unity instead of applying these laws? So that's my I think my advice or hope is that the United Nations, the Human Rights Council, would start a discussion with India to promote its own constitution and promote abide by its obligations that are under the international law.
Cece, I would like to answer.
I just want to add too, like Shaheryar said in the beginning, it seems like India gets a pass on this. We focus on a lot of nations that, you know, we say are doing terrible things, and yet India is doing worse, and I think they get a pass on that. So I think there would be some benefit for some international pressure instead of us all turning, you know, a blind eye to, oh, India's great, they're democratic, everything's fine in India. We need to hold them accountable. And I think, again, changing the laws inside, yes, that's great. But we've seen from the very top, from Prime Minister Modi and his ties to the RSS and the BJP, they have that Hindu nationalist agenda. And they're the ones that are in charge. And that's not going to change, I think, until the world starts putting pressure on them to say, we know what's going on here. You can't just pretend it's not. And you need to change, and you need to hold to your constitution and to the things that Prime Minister Modi has said, that there is religious freedom in India. Well, then let's see that happen. So I think really international pressure is what's going to have to happen, because inside India, we don't see any indication that they're willing to change.
We do.
It's sorry, a follow-on question to what your comment just was. In terms of, I think we're pretty much aware that especially the current Indian government, the change in their attitude, let alone the legal system, is kind of beyond imaginable in the near future. However, as outside of India, what I would be interested in knowing is what can we do to help people who are actually suffering under these laws. I personally, you know, as by chance I was actually in this meeting today, I met somebody in London who converted from Hinduism to Christianity, and his whole family turned against him that he had to come to UK. He then filed an FIR through the Indian embassy from UK, I think, against the authorities in India, but instead of protecting him, the Indian authorities put an FIR against him, and he's now suffering in the mental institute in London, right? But because India has done its best to keep itself whitelisted in the international community, he's unable to get any help, whether that's an asylum or anything. And I'm really kind of curious as if we know the laws in India are biased against the religions, and it kind of forces people not to convert or give them the freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of belief. You know, India is violating massive human rights declarations, and yet, as in the West, do we not have any mechanism to help these people who are suffering, or can we not enforce India to at least set the record on human rights better?
Yes, maybe one other question, just 1 minute, last question, and then we answer.
My name is Altaf. I am from Kashmir. As we have discussed much more about these anti-conversion laws, these laws in India have become, they have legitimized this violence and discrimination against Muslims or Christians, exacerbating communal divides in India. The current Indian government, we cannot expect anything from the current Indian political dispensation. It reflects Hindu majoritarianism in India, and they are doing it on their own to have their vote bank and all that. Is there any recourse to it and the UN human rights systems that we can use? Thank you.
I just want to address, and it's sadly maybe going to be the same answer. I was Pastor Nerren's attorney who dealt with his 7-month detention in India. And his attempt was to go in India and try and change things from the inside. That's, you know, as a missionary or doing that kind of work of trying to help with education and other things. So obviously that has been cut off. They will no longer allow that. As you saw, he did not commit any crime. I can go into the details of what he was charged with. The charges that were alleged against him, he couldn't have even done, yet he was in prison and then detained for 7 months. So I don't know that there's anything we can do inside India to help, but I just want to keep saying as much pressure and as much just shaming, President Modi for making the statements that he makes, then he needs to believe that. If India is a democracy, if India really does have religious freedom, then we need to force them to uphold that and just keep hounding on their human rights violations and expose what's really going on there.
Thank you very much. Now it's time is over. I would like to thank you again. I also would like to thank Christian Solidarity International for co-sponsoring the side event. Thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers. Once again, you have the reports here. You can take them. We have a lot of work ahead to do. So thank you again for your presence, for your commitment, and for what we are going to do together.
Okay.